Good morning, everybody. We are officially live for the season, the start of another Beluga season here in Churchill, Manitoba. And my name is Kyron. I'm joined today by Brian, our new captain on the Beluga boat.
Hey, everybody.
And so we're aboard the Sea Canary, our second season with this new boat. We're super excited to be back on the water, and we've got a beautiful day. Right now it's sunny, clear skies, lots of belugas. We're seeing some major feeding activity happening kind of all around. I think we've had a few belugas already visit us on the underwater camera, but just based on what I'm seeing here on the water right now, it looks like they're mostly focused on feeding, and we have been seeing a pile of capelin. They're small little fish that these belugas have been munching on. So we'll see kind of what the tour brings today. Right now they'll be focusing on getting their breakfast, but we might get more activity later on the underwater camera, so stay tuned for that. And so kind of just anybody who's tuning in for the first time, welcome to the Explore.org and Polar Bears International Beluga Whale Camera. Just to give you a quick kind of rundown of what we've got going on here. On this boat, we've got a 25-foot Hughes craft. We have an underwater camera fixed to the boat, and we've got an on-deck camera. So you got two feeds that you can select from on the Explore.org website. The on-deck camera kind of gives you a view of the surrounding area. We often see the belugas following behind us on the boat. And so, you get the opportunity to see the whales. We'll sometimes see things like polar bears or birds or other wildlife, and then just the beautiful Churchill landscape. And then we've got the underwater camera as well. And so that camera, we can raise and lower it as we need, and right now it's down, and so that's what's given you the opportunity to view the beluga whales as they follow behind us, so seeing them in their underwater world. And then lastly, we've also got a hydrophone fixed to the boat as well, and so when you're tuning in, make sure to bump up the volume on your feed, and you can hear the canaries of the sea, as we like to call them. So the beluga whales, they're extremely vocal. They like to make a lot of really interesting noises, clicks and whistles and that sort of thing, and we're already hearing some of that coming through the hull of the boat. So it's definitely worthwhile to have your volume turned up so that you can enjoy the belugas singing. We are in Churchill, Manitoba, as I think I had already mentioned. We're on the Churchill River right now in the estuary, and we're right on the shoreline of the Hudson Bay. We may travel out into the bay later during the tour, but up in northern Canada, northern Manitoba, and every year we see these massive migrations of beluga whales. So we get a whole pile of whales that join us here in Churchill for the summertime, and they're here for a number of different reasons. Right now they're feeding, so lots of opportunities to eat things like capelin. They're opportunistic, so there are some other fish species that they will eat during the summer as well, but the capelin are very plentiful at the moment, so they're mostly focused on eating them. And then the warm waters here in the Churchill River are also great for all the young calves. So we may get the opportunity to see some newborn calves today, or for sure through the summer. We always get lots of chances to view them during the summer, but that warm water helps to keep them warm as they develop their fat layer, their insulating layer. The rocky bottoms, it's shallow here in the estuary too, and there's lots of big boulders and rocks, and so the beluga whales are molting at this time of year, and they'll often rub up against those rocks to assist with the molting process. And then lastly, one of the reasons they're here is the estuary offers protection from predation. So there have been instances where orcas are in the area, and if something like that happens, the belugas can retreat to the shallow water to get away from the killer whales. And so that's kind of what the boat's all about, and sort of a little bit of backstory on Churchill and the beluga whales. If anybody has any questions, make sure if you're on the Explore.org website, you can scroll down to the message board and throw in your images, screenshots from the underwater camera. You could also include photos questions or comments, and we'll be paying attention to the message board throughout the broadcast, and we'll do our best to address any and all of the questions, or we'll seek out the answers and we'll get back to you during a later tour. And so today we've got kind of a shorter tour. We do stay on schedule with the tides, which fluctuate each day. And so we were out late last night, and then now we're out. It's early in the morning here in Churchill, and so we switched to the morning tides, and we've got 2 hours out here on the water today. So from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Central Time. And it's also Arctic Sea Ice Day. And so we've got a couple special guests that I'm sure if you've tuned into the cams, you'll recognize these folks. Stefan, Courtney, and Nikki from the Assiniboine Park Zoo are joining us today. And at 9 a.m. Central, we'll be hopping back on the mics, and we're going to do just a live chat and talk a little bit about Arctic Sea Ice Day, what it's all about, the importance of Arctic sea ice for the beluga whales, for polar bears, and other wildlife up here in the Arctic, and why it's important for all of us around the world. So make sure to tune in at 9 a.m., and we'll be going live at that time to have a little discussion. I want to maybe pass things over to Brian. So as I mentioned, he's our new captain for the summer season. And Brian, I don't know if you want to chat. You've got some experience here in Churchill. You've been here many times before, and maybe not in the summertime, but yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is, that's a good point actually. I've been coming to Churchill for quite a few years now, working with polar bears, and kind of came here for my first year just to check out the area and give it a try, and fell in love with the place. I mean, it's pretty magical here, as you know. I'm sure you guys can see now with our right now actually on our underwater cams and our deck cams. But yeah, I fell in love with it here, and I love the fall time here and the winter. But I've never actually been here in the summer, so this is brand new for me as well, and to be able to have the opportunity to come here and to experience these incredible whales, and in their natural environment is quite amazing.
Well, and you've got some experience on the water back at home, is that right?
Yeah, so I run a science-based charter back home in Newfoundland, and we work extensively with sharks mainly on a tagging, catch and release tagging based process. We aid for science in that way, but we also work with humpback whales and seabirds of all kinds back in Newfoundland. So yeah, I spend quite a bit of time on the ocean.
Cool. Yeah, and my guess too is we'll be getting a few questions. I'm sure people are going to want to hear more about some of that work.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So as I mentioned, we'll make sure to keep tabs on our message board. I think we'll switch the mics off here for a few minutes, and hopefully we'll hear some belugas on the hydrophone, and then we'll chime back in here shortly.
This wind is making it more difficult. Hey guys, it's Brian here. I just wanted to just notice there was a question came in there from one of our viewers as to why the belugas kind of approach the boat and follow us from time to time, and they are very curious creatures. They do actually love the boats, and they tend to come over and say hi and have a look, and I'm sure they enjoy the bubbles too being created by the motor back there, and they kind of get in that draft there and just ride it for a little while and get to curb their curiosity.
Hi everyone, happy Arctic Sea Ice Day and welcome to the Beluga Whale Cameras hosted by Explore.org and Polar Bears International. Thanks for tuning in, we're happy to have you join us today. It's the official launch of the Beluga boat for the 2026 summer season. We're happy to be back out here on the water, and we've already had some fantastic activity. We've got lots of beluga whales in the area surrounding us here on the boat. We're seeing lots of feeding behavior happening, and we've already been getting some fantastic snapshots on our underwater camera. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and head over to explore.org if you'd like to view the feed live there. And we've also got the message board where you can ask questions and you can post snapshots and things like that from the underwater camera. So we're here to chat about Arctic Sea Ice Day today, and joining me is Stefan Peterson from the Assiniboine Park Conservancy. Hi, Stefan.
How's it going? It's great to be back here on the water and amongst the beluga and with good friends on the boats and new friends, and we're looking forward to a great season of beluga, but really today we're focused on Arctic sea ice and all of the ways that it's important both for animals in the Arctic, but on a broader sense it's important for moderating the climate and keeping us all healthy and happy and in many different ways.
Mm-hmm. And so just kind of like a little, if you're not familiar with Arctic Sea Ice Day, it's a day meant to bring awareness to the importance of Arctic sea ice to, up here in the Arctic, but also to all of us around the world. And it's historically, it's the time of year.
Send you right through. And then there's a whole ecosystem around the sea ice that builds up. So there's phytoplankton, there's channels that form as the brine gets and the salt gets pushed out of that ice. And it supports a whole ecosystem. It's a whole habitat for all these different species of plankton and copiopods and amphipods, all these little small invertebrates that then feed the cod and then feed the seals and then feed the polar bears and then support that whole ecosystem. So, it looks like just flat old sea ice, but really it's habitat, and you should think about it more like looking at a forest.
Yeah, it's teeming with life. We like to say it's it's the sea ice is to the Arctic what soil is to a forest.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say it's forming the base of the Arctic food web, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and those brine channels are really interesting as the ice freezes and excretes the salt, creating those little voids, and then that sunlight shining through, and that's what creates those blooms. And yeah, it's such an interesting, and like you said, you'll look out and it just looks like cold, flat, wind blown ice, and underneath there's just all this activity. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Great, yeah, and so I did want to mention too about the tensile strength. I've read, explorers and stuff talking about walking on really thin sea ice, and it just sort of bends and flexes. And we've watched bears in the fall time. It's really interesting as we see the sea ice forming, and those bears, they're desperate to get out there. That's where their food is, and you can watch them. They're out on that ice long before I would ever dream of, going and testing it out. And it's this really large animal, but they're at home out there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the risks if they fall through are a lot less than if the risks for us if we fell through. But part of me thinks, if I had a pair of snowshoes, and it wouldn't be so fatal if I fell in. It would be fun to go out at the same time and feel, the big slow waves as an entire ice sheet kind of just like bends in.
Yeah, those swells. You see the bears as they get lifted up on the swells and dip down, and it's fun to watch from the shore, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit, why the Arctic is important, the sea ice is important to the Arctic. Other animals are also using the sea ice, or it's important to them as well. Obviously, we're here viewing the beluga whales. Can you tell us a little bit why they might need the sea ice to?
Yeah. For sure. We've been doing work on Arctic seals that are found around Churchill. So around here we have harbor seals. They're pretty common in the summer, and they're more of a temperate seal, but they're out here in the Arctic, and so they'll wait, and as soon as the river breaks up, they'll get out of the bay and have their pups, and that's a way to get away from where the polar bears are, essentially. Whereas the ring seals, they're really adapted to sea ice, so they maintain breathing holes through up to like a meter of ice, maybe even more. They're perfectly at home all through the winter in 100% sea ice. They have their pups on the sea ice, but underneath either pressure ridges or drifts, so that the pup is protected, but from the elements at least, but they can still access the habitat below, the water below. So that sea ice habitat is critical for pupping. In the spring, all the ring seals are molting, so they can speed up that process if they haul out onto that sea ice. And so they warm up, they can get their energetics of their skin going faster, and they can shed all their skin and replace it with new fur that'll keep them going for the rest of the year. So without that sea ice platform, they have to do that in the water, and the energetic cost is way higher, so they need to eat way more. And so, critical kind of piece of that whole system. And then bearded seals are around here too, and they're also an ice-adapted seal, similar to ring seals. So they don't maintain breathing holes, but they'll use cracks and holes in the ice in order to stay here all winter long. But again, hauling out on that ice as a place to rest and warm up and do all these really important kind of parts of their history, their natural history, their lifestyle.
I always thought that's incredible, those ring seals, how they can, because here in the Hudson Bay we've got, it's called seasonal sea ice, and there's that constant current, and the ice is sort of always in motion, and it's breaking up, and it's moving around and shifting, and somehow they're able to maintain these holes, which are just kind of drifting around, like the fact that they maintain multiple breathing holes, in case they need to visit another one. It's always been amazing that they can keep tabs on that, while they're swimming, searching for food, doing other things.
One of the reasons we think bears are really want to get on the ice in the fall is males and females, ring seals, will set up territories, and so when they're doing that just when the ice is forming, they're not really focused on bears as much, because they're focusing on kind of getting those prime kind of territories that tend to be in the land-fast ice that doesn't move like dangerous, and it's a much safer place to raise pups. So they're trying to establish those territories, but at the same time the ice is thin, and if the bears can get out, you get lots of predation on seals that early in that season. Like folks will, that are doing research will fly the coast at that time, and it'll just be seal kill after seal kill, because they're focused on other things at that time, and the sea ice isn't quite thick enough to really protect them the way it does later in the year.
Yeah, wow, and that's great for the bears, an early meal, as the ice is forming and they're just starting to get out after that long fasting period.
Yeah.
It's, as I mentioned, seasonal sea ice, so the bears, they are forced ashore where they'll fast for a period of time through the summer, and then they're just, waiting eager on the shoreline for that ice to form, and I guess, that's really great if they can get out and get a meal early on when they first make it back out there. So another thing I did want to mention too is people up here also rely on the sea ice for transportation, for access to food, and then, it's also, I mentioned before, it's important to all of us around the world. And do we want to chat a little bit about that, like why that is? Because I think people, living far from the Arctic might think like, how's my life tied to sea ice, right? Yeah. How could I possibly be connected to that environment up there?
Yeah, for sure. There's probably many sea ice experts that'll give a better explanation. I stick to the biology a lot, but the sea ice, it ends up covering a lot of dark water with really white kind of reflective areas, and so that reflects a lot of the heat from the sun back into the atmosphere and away from Earth. So it actually helps moderate and cool the climate by reflecting so much energy away from the dark waters. When we have open water, it'll just it absorbs. And much like if you're wearing a black coat on a sunny day, you're going to get a lot hotter than if you have a really reflective white coat. So, that, and it covers such a great area. Like, it's hard to imagine how big the Arctic is and how much sea ice actually forms. So it can make a real impact, and that's why we want to keep it around for longer. Having typically in the Arctic Ocean, we would have sea ice reflecting sun for a big part of the summer, if not all of summer. And now, as we have these losses, there's more and more dark water that's absorbing more heat, and then that makes it harder for sea ice to form again in the fall. And it's just kind of a feedback of warming that is not ideal.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting facts about that too is we've got multi-year ice, so ice that will, it'll form and then it lasts. It doesn't melt, the following season. It's multi-year, meaning it remains. It continues to kind of build up, ideally, hopefully.
Yeah.
But right now, as we're seeing that ice melting, and you mentioned that feedback, you can kind of think of the ice as sort of like an insulating layer. And not only are we losing, that layer, but that multi-year ice, that thicker ice, is also getting thinner and weaker. So what's left is, also being compromised in that way. So,
yeah, it all builds together to make it easier to melt and less of it, and that's not good for the climate, the weather patterns that we're all experiencing. And it's certainly not good for all the animals that are really adapted to that sea ice, whether it's like year-round, multi-year ice to annual ice like we see here. Is they've had hundreds of thousands of years to really become adapted to that situation. Mm-hmm. And as it changes, it's changing really fast, and that's hard to cope with.
Yeah, and we're warming much quicker here in the Arctic, but like you said, it's also impacting temperatures around the world.
Yeah.
And our beluga whales here, we've got a bunch of them cruising along behind the beluga boat at the moment. We continue to get some good activity. Yeah, they're ice adapted as well. I don't think we fully touched on that, but the belugas, they rely on the sea ice. They're relying on it for food, of course, but also protection. They're meant to be in and amongst the ice. A good comparison is we talked about the killer whales who may prey on the beluga whales. The belugas, they don't have their dorsal fin like the big dorsal fin the orcas got, and that allows them to navigate through that.
Yeah.
That ice and spend more time in the ice, which will protect them from orcas getting access.
Yeah, we think of beluga as being the Arctic whale, but we also have some further south populations in the St. Lawrence. But there's also sea ice in the St. Lawrence River. People think, it's quite far south, but so they still are adapted really to that ecosystem. And yeah, as you say, they have like physical adaptations, like not having a dorsal fin. They have a dorsal ridge that's pretty tough, so they can poke through, a small layer of ice when they're leaving the bay or going into areas where there's kind of open water and cracks and leads amongst bigger ice. So that's kind of how they survive the winter. They have a really mobile neck, so unlike most whales where they're fused, there's a few whales like river dolphins and beluga that have really flexible necks, and that's really good for them to be like foraging fish off the bottom of sea ice or foraging along the rocky bottom of the ocean. So kind of this adaptation for all these sorts of places where you can find a nice tasty Arctic cod kind of thing, or a capelin. Right now we're seeing lots of capelin in the area, and they're kind of mid-water fish. But a lot of times on the beluga cam, we'll see whales that look like they have chapped lips, and we think that's because they're feeding either on the bottom of the ice or in the rocks on the bottom, and just getting bruised lips, I guess.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of like specialized tools for hunting, under the ice or on the seafloor or anything in between, right? Between using suction, or they can blow water to dislodge something from a crack in the ice. It's really interesting. They're so well adapted for this environment.
Yeah, they really are. And yeah, we see them in the estuaries because we think there's a bunch of benefits in terms of it's a bit warmer for calves, so when they're first born, they don't have a lot of fat, so they can come in and they don't have to spend as much energy. They'll add fat really quickly, and they do go out to the bay and back in, but there's probably some thermal benefits. There's molting benefits, so again, just like the seals, they go through an annual molt and shed off a layer of skin, get it all fresh and nice for the coming winter. So that might be sped up or be a little less costly if they're in warmer waters. In some areas, we know on killer whales, like Arctic or Antarctic killer whales, will come out and into temperate waters so that they can get rid of diatoms and things that are growing on their skin. So there might be some advantage to different salinity and warmer temperatures in that. And then killer whales, they don't like really going in the ice in the Arctic, and they are not really inclined. They're a bigger whale, so they don't like going into shallower waters. So, these estuaries are great escape places for beluga whales too. So
so much to learn, and it's why we're all so excited when we get back out here to start off the season. And so, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll continue to watch the message board. If there's any questions, we can hop back on the mics. And there's some more programming that Polar Bears International will be offering for Arctic Sea Ice Day, so you can check it out on our website, polarbearsinternational.org. You can see some of the other stuff we've got planned for the day, and how you can, help with conserving Arctic sea ice and polar bears and everything that we love up here in the Arctic. We'll be seeing Stefan, and we'll be seeing his crew out here for the next little bit. It's always great to have you guys out, so looking forward
till the end of the month, I think, at least.
Yeah, so we'll get to chat a bunch more, and if you guys come up with questions in the meantime, if we hop offline here today at the end of the tour, but you got something that you're thinking about, put that on the message board. We'll keep an eye out for it, and then we can address it as we go. We've also got Jacqueline Aubin, who was with us last year, and Mariana, who are going to be returning, and we can think about all the vocalization questions you might have at that time, and more beluga content. So it's really exciting summer ahead of us. I think we're going to have a lot of really great guests, and we're off to a good start here. Lots of belugas in the estuary, good visibility, all the great things. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll chat with you guys again soon. Thanks, Stefan.
Yeah, happy Sea Ice Day.
just scrolling through the message board, and I see a question from Tawny asking, when the belugas get close to the camera, why do they open their mouths? And I think that's a fantastic question. We got the whole Beluga Bits team on the back deck because we're surrounded by beluga whales right now. So I'll see if I could answer your question, and then we'll ask Stefan if there's anything that he wants to add once he gets back up front here. But as we mentioned earlier in the tour, the belugas, they're very curious. We're super fortunate, actually, here in Churchill, because if you travel elsewhere in the Arctic, where the belugas live, you might not experience the same type of behavior. So we're really lucky. The whales here, they want to come check out the boat. They're really curious, and that's the reason they approach us, and why they approach the underwater camera. So they're kind of drawn in. They want to see us. They're oftentimes, checking us out up on the boat. We can see them looking up at us. They enjoy that prop wash in behind, that swirling water and those bubbles that are coming off the back of the motor. And then that camera, I think, is just something unusual. And we're the only boat out here on the water that has anything like that fixed to the boat. And so it seems to just, I think, pique their curiosity. And so on the old boats and basically every different version of this underwater camera that we've had mounted over the years, the belugas always just seem to come and approach it. They oftentimes will open their mouths. They may just open their mouths in front of the cameras, but lots of times we get video of the whales actually physically biting the camera as well. And so it's great for us. I think they're just testing things out. It might be something similar to, us reaching and feeling things. If we're curious about an item, we'll use our sense of touch. We could use our hands. So the belugas, they're just exploring with their mouths. But it gives us these opportunities for some really interesting photos where we could see the inside of their mouths. You could see their teeth and their big tongue. And it's really neat to see. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll continue to watch the message board.
Good morning, Beluga Cam folks. So my name is Dr. Courtney Stewart. I am also one of the fun group that's come up from Assiniboine Park Conservancy, or the Assiniboine Park Zoo. Here to join in the fun for the next few days out on the Beluga boat. So thanks so much for tuning in. I see we have a few questions on the stream. So we had one question from Zeke asking, some of the whales have lots of dark splotches all over their skin. What is that? So we see that a lot in our younger whales, so whales that are juveniles or yearlings. We think that that's just sort of as they're growing up. They maybe aren't as great at molting their skin as they're growing. So they just kind of tend to look a little bit rough. So most of the time it's perfectly fine and healthy. We call those pock marks, just because they kind of look like almost like chicken pock marks. But yeah, no concerns there with those whales. Kind of just... I like to think about it as, teenagers growing up and maybe having acne, kind of having a little bit of rough skin for a few years. But as they grow older, we tend to see those pock marks kind of start to disappear. But we do see it as they're sort of molting as well. So this time of year, we're seeing whales coming into the estuaries to do their annual molt of their skin. So you might see some of the older whales with that as well. But yeah, great question. Thanks for asking that.
That did just make me think, as you're answering the question, might be a good opportunity to talk about beluga bits. We haven't, it's just the first day, so we haven't been on the mics all that much, but chat a little bit about that, what we're doing from the boat, and then maybe some of the successes and things you guys have discovered so far.
Yeah, so Beluga Boats has been going for a number of years now. So we at the zoo, all this lovely live streamed video footage that you guys are tuning into now, we actually get to take it home with us at the end of the summer. And what we do with that is we break all that video footage up into individual images. And then we have an online community science platform on Zooniverse called Beluga Bits. And what we get to do with that is we ask folks like yourselves, so any of you tuning in can sign up to Beluga Bits to come and join us. And we'll ask you to help us classify those images and help us out with our science. So we might be asking you, do you see any calves in the image? How many adults do you see? Do you see anything other than beluga, like jellyfish or other things of interest that you might want to highlight for us? Our citizen and community scientists have really helped us out over the years, even recapturing certain individuals. So individuals that have particular scars of note that we've actually, our community scientists have actually pointed out to us and helped us to see that we see some of the same individuals coming back year on year, which is very, very exciting for us.
And one of them, the reason I thought about the whole beluga bits thing is when you mentioned the pox marks, right? And that was one of the recaptures as a whale that we saw over multiple years. That's how you're identifying it, right?
Yeah, they'll have kind of mixes of different scars, and they could be from a lot of different sort of sources and stuff. But yeah, one particular individual has a very unfortunate wound, or former wound on his face. We call him Scarface, unfortunately. But our community scientists actually found him on our cameras. We didn't even see him, I don't think, that year. But then once we got the data up and you folks were classifying it, somebody said, hey, I think I've seen that whale before. And they were able to point him out again. And yeah, sure enough, we found out that he came back, and it's really cool. And we've seen him a couple of years. So even with, this little kind of scratch on his face, he was doing just fine.
Yeah, and then we were chatting early on, and with Casey, who joined us the other day, but the amount of volunteers you guys have had now who are participating in the project is amazing. Yeah, we've just broken 40,000 participants on our platform, so we're always happy to welcome more. The more the merrier. The more cool science we get to do, the more of you that join us. So, and I think we've also just surpassed 10 million classifications, which is incredible. So for those of you that are tuning in that are already on Zooniverse and are helping us out with Beluga Bits, thank you so much. You've helped us a great deal. And those of you that want to join, come check us out and help out with our science. And that's a really good example of, how important citizen science is. You guys are a relatively small team, and can you imagine you guys have over 10 million classifications, and that's just not possible, right? It's only with folks who are like you guys tuning in.
Absolutely, yeah. So we actually calculated it, and we contribute about 1% of all of the Zooniverse classifications worldwide. So that's doesn't sound like a lot, but that's actually a huge number. So thank you guys again so much for helping out with that, and yeah, hope to see some more of you on there. There's also talk functions, so if you're asking questions now, but if you're going through the actual data later and you want to ask more questions, we're always there to help you out and help you become beluga experts as well.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, thanks everybody, and thanks Zeke for the question. We'll keep watch for more.
Yeah, great question. Thanks everyone.
All right, we're having such a good time on our first day back on the water that we sort of lost track of time, but we are at the end of today's tour, so we got to get off the water. I mentioned we're kind of operating with the tides here, and so there is a period of time during high tide when it's the safest to be on the water, and then during the lower periods, it's not as good driving around, and we can't launch the boats at that time. So that's the reason that our schedule fluctuates the way it does. But thanks. We had a fantastic start to the season. This was a really great day to kind of kick things off, and appreciate everybody who is tuning in. And thanks for the questions and all the snapshots. Really good way to begin the season. Thanks to Explore and to Polar Bears International and to the Assiniboine Park Zoo. Tomorrow we'll be back on the water, so our schedule is going to resume as normal moving forward. We're going to be out all through the week, Monday to Fridays, and we'll try to let you know in advance when each tour time is, but you should be able to see that in the featured comment section on the explore.org website. And so tomorrow, 8 to 11 Central Time, 8 in the morning till 11 o'clock is when we're planning to be out on the water. And so I hope to see you guys there. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Thanks.